Welcome to Smart Remarks, where oil and water mix about as well as conservatism and reality. So we've been following the story of the oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico, one of the biggest man-made disasters in history, and the question becomes, who are you going to blame? Conservatives have been tripping over themselves to turn this into Obama's Katrina! And they want to blame the scope of the disaster on government or government inaction. And so that begs the question, is government responsible for the spill, or does the responsibility lie somewhere else? Our old friend Rush Limbaugh had this headline on his site this week: Left blames BP, Bush, and Cheney. Let's forget Bush and Cheney for a moment, though they were in charge of the Mineral Management Service when it devolved into a frat house. But can you imagine blaming BP for this disaster? Outrage! I mean, what has BP done, right? Except, as Andrew Leonard wrote on Salon.com this week, quote, BP's profits depend on extracting oil at the lowest cost possible, not with the greatest safety possible. Just as Don Blankenship made sure everyone at Massey Coal knew that running coal was the primary responsibility of mine operators and skimped on safety, so too did Tony Hayward's BP ruthlessly cut costs to increase profitability. And that, of course, put pressure all down the line on Transocean, the rig operator, and Halliburton, the oil services contractor, to get the job done cheaply. In other words, this is your free market at work, right? So why are we surprised conservatives can't bring themselves to blame BP? This is part of a pattern. On this show last week, we talked about illegal immigration, people crossing our borders to come here and get jobs. And they do find jobs. They find jobs in the construction industry. They find jobs in the agricultural industry. So for all the complaining they do about illegal immigration, how much pressure have conservatives brought to bear on those industries? And the answer is astoundingly little. And witness the conservative reaction to Goldman Sachs. The company's being scapegoated. The timing of the SEC investigation is suspect. Outrage! But let's talk a little bit about what Goldman Sachs has done. Not just the allegations in the SEC case, but its role in the collapse of Greece, its role at the very center of the American economy, and all that has gone wrong with it. Does Goldman Sachs bear any blame for any of these things? Or is private enterprise always virtuous and blame-free regardless of the situation? We see now why conservative ideologues must blame everything on government, for if private enterprise acts recklessly or unethically, well, that's an argument for government intervention. And we can't have that. Instead, conservatives will argue that government didn't do its job, but not only that, government shouldn't be empowered to do a better job next time. Regulation failed, so the answer is less regulation. Because after all, we all know that BP, maybe Massey Coal, can be counted on to put safety first next time, right?
BP is ultimately responsible under the law for paying the costs of response and cleanup operations. But we are fully prepared to meet our responsibilities to any and all affected communities. That's why we've been working